For centuries, the prophecies of Nostradamus have been part of the historical record. While highly speculative and controversial, their author's legacy endures. Viewer discretion is advised. December 21st, 2012. Daybreak doesn't come. All remains dark. The world has come to an end. Many ancient cultures from across the globe describe startling events that seem to be taking place now. Are they pointing to 2012? Newly discovered drawings that many believe are from the famed prophet Nostradamus may hold the answer.
We're really on the edge of the biggest ride in all of history.
Life on Earth has faced extinction at least 5 times before. Is Nostradamus telling us that another epic disaster is on the way?
2012 is kind of the beginning of upheavals in the world, rather than the end.
Is 2012 the year the cosmic clock finally winds down to 0 days, 0 hope? Decoding the final predictions of Nostradamus may provide the critical answers before the clock strikes 2012. The recently discovered lost book of Nostradamus reveals drawings that may contain coded clues about what will happen in 2012. Like Nostradamus's quatrains, these drawings give dire warnings, and this popular prophet's immense stature makes them difficult to ignore.
Many people today, when they find themselves frustrated by the inability of science to answer some of the deepest questions of our time, are looking to the past. And this is where we look to the great seers of the past, such as Nostradamus.
Our planet is faced with crises of alarming complexity. Oil shortages, vanishing species, deadly tsunamis, economic chaos, and nuclear threats. Is this coincidence, or is something more ominous unfolding?
We are reaching a confluence of tipping points in fundamental systems. There's tipping points in the energy system, there's tipping points in the climate systems of the planet, there's tipping points in terms of the financial system, food production, water issues.
We're at the moment when all of these things converge, that time when the world is either destroyed or made new or both.
Every world culture has always had its own prophecies of an end times. I think it's only natural that people are feeling a connection between our cultural traditions with what is happening in the world today.
Eerier still, some believe these same prophecies are portrayed in the Lost Book's images. All seem to point to the fact that in 2012, from the Earth's perspective, the Sun will align with the center of the Milky Way galaxy in an incredibly rare astronomical phenomenon that occurs only once every 26,000 years.
Half the 26,000-year cycle coincides pretty darn accurately with the last ice age and the end thereof, and to talk about the greatest time of global warming was the melting of the last ice age. God forbid we should be in for something of that magnitude.
Because the Earth is rotating, our view of the stars changes over time. The galactic alignment, in simplest terms, is when the Sun appears to rise in a direct line with the center of the Milky Way galaxy. According to an array of ancient cultures, this alignment seems to signify a time of traumatic change.
The world as a whole feels like we're approaching some kind of passage. And I think what is at the root of this is the galactic alignment.
One of the most significant ancient cultures thought to have observed this phenomenon is the Maya, famous for their advanced grasp of astronomy. Their possible warning that this alignment of the Sun and the galaxy center, known as the Dark Rift, might bring terrible consequences, is believed to be repeated by a number of ancient cultures.
Most of these end times, apocalyptic predictions and visions of the future have centered on the fact that when the sun is rising in this dark rift, it's going to be bad. This is the time of cataclysm. This is the time of destruction.
The ancients knew how to be at one with themselves, with all of nature, with all of life, with all of the cosmos. And we have lost touch with that. A lot of what is happening now, particularly with the changes that are taking place in the ecology, within the oceans, all of these things, which were all predicted by Nostradamus and several other different prophets.
Like the Maya and other cultures before him, Nostradamus looks into the stars and sees coming danger.
There will be a great shedding of blood. Heaven will appear unjust, both on land and sea and in the air. Cults, famine, kingdoms, plagues, confusion.
A controversial figure shrouded in mystery, Nostradamus died almost 500 years ago, centuries and worlds away from 2012. Yet time and again, his predictions are interpreted as highly accurate.
He has foreseen many of the major events, changes in terms of politics, religion, even science and inventions.
Why is he the only one we're talking about in 4.5 centuries? There's only one reason. Because every so often comes a bright light of clear data that could only have happened from somebody who saw it before it happened.
When a manuscript with Nostradamus' name on it appears at a book exhibition in Rome, there is talk that the timing of its discovery is no accident. This controversial book contains a series of 7 images that some experts believe is a detailed chronology of the coming crisis in 2012. Now, for the first time, these drawings will be compared with prophecies and warnings from ancient people of all backgrounds.
These prophecies have this eerie resemblance to each other, which many researchers into this work, kind of get goosebumps.
There are, by my count, 15 or 16 independent kind of indicators that all suggest that 2012 is going to be a time of extraordinary shift. There's no way to see your way through the layered kind of series of converging extraordinary things. Even one of them is enough to dramatically disrupt the whole system.
2012 is the year of the domino effect. It's the year which could set off the chain of events where a natural catastrophe spurs a war, brings down an aspect of the economy, where the system, which is in one sense so robust but also so fragile and interdependent, I think 2012, I think it's going to be that kind of year. And I hope I'm wrong.
Will daybreak come on December 21st, 2012? Or will it be the year that ends all years? Hidden predictions about the end of days may be encoded in the Egyptian pyramids, the Mayan calendar, the mysterious cross of Henday, and the secret society of Freemasons. And Nostradamus may hold the key that unlocks them all. December 21st, 2012 approaches. Will it mark a catastrophic occurrence, as some ancient cultures suggest? Many believe the date is targeting a rare astrological phenomenon called the galactic alignment that may trigger unspeakable chaos. The recently uncovered lost book of Nostradamus contains 7 stark images that also might point to 2012. Is this proof that there was ancient knowledge of a coming event?
The 7 images in the lost book of Nostradamus are telling us a story, and that's why they're united by this wheel of fortune or wheel of time at the top. This is the part that Nostradamus really wants us to recognize, emphasize, and understand. Those images start with the sun, and under the sun is a lion. That's obviously calling attention to the fact that when the sun is in Leo, this is somehow important. When the sun is in Leo, or when the sun is in the opposite sign, Aquarius, that means we're at the galactic alignment.
This is another reference by Nostradamus to the galactic alignment. Many believe the Maya discovered this intriguing phenomenon caused by the Earth's rotation hundreds of years ago. If the Earth spun perfectly on its axis, the view of the sky above would never change. But because it spins slightly off-center in a wobble motion, our view of the stars shifts slowly over time. Every 26,000 years, this background lines up so that the sun appears to rise directly in front of the center of the galaxy, creating what some call the galactic alignment.
Clearly, Nostradamus was aware of the time period from roughly 1992 to roughly 2012, 2014 as being enormously significant because of the number of quatrains that we can specifically identify as having some reference to this time period. It's the idea that he pinpointed astronomically the moment in which the sun is most directly conjunct with the center of the galaxy. That's a pretty good hit.
Nostradamus uses a variety of methods to derive his quatrains. But his understanding of the heavens is crucial to his work. He is an astute astrologer who believes that the map of the future is embedded in the stars.
To a certain degree, his basic idea of forecasting the future is based on the idea that time is cyclical, that there are motions of the sun and the moon and the stars, and that as those patterns, those angles between planets repeat, that there would be similar events.
In order to chart these coming events, Nostradamus studies changes in the night sky, some that take decades to play out.
Seems to have been aware of what we call the precession of the equinox, in which that the whole night sky is moving slowly backwards 1 degree every 72 years.
This is a direct reference to the coming galactic alignment that may be at the heart of the 2012 phenomenon. The Earth's off-center rotation means that our view of the stars shifts very slowly, changing only 1 degree every 72 years. Amazingly, some researchers believe this was precisely charted by the ancient Mayan civilization. The Mayans used their gift for understanding the Earth's movements to create a remarkably precise calendar, one that has endured for thousands of years. It ends on December 21st, 2012.
Once every 26,000 years, we line up through the December solstice sun with the center of the Milky Way galaxy. This seems to be the reason why the Maya picked December 21st of 2012 to end their great cycle.
The Mayan civilization thrives in Central America between the years 250 and 900 CE, then mysteriously disappears. Both scientifically sophisticated and savage, they are able to predict the galactic alignment without telescopic tools and seem to associate it with a cycle of violent change.
If we go back 26,000 years ago to the last time that we entered into Aquarius, We find that this is the beginning of Cro-Magnon man, the end of Neanderthal. The first campfires are found at this point, and we can see that there are these incredible historical correspondences. We know that the last time that the galactic alignment happened, hundreds of species disappeared.
Skeptics claim that an ancient interpretation of the stars is unlikely to have any significant impact on our lives. But the astonishing achievements of ancient Mayan astronomers still mystifies experts today.
Until recently, we looked at most of the higher civilizations or advanced cultures in the Americas as being slightly below what had developed in the West. But they were, in fact, anything but primitive. Particularly the Mayan, who are probably the greatest culture of astronomers on the planet.
The Maya believed that that black hole at the center of the Milky Way was the navel of the galaxy from which the stars were born. And today, astronomers believe that, in fact, that black hole at the center of the galaxy is where the stuff that the stars and the planets are made. Pretty darn good for 1,500 years ago.
We still do not know how the Maya were able to pinpoint these amazingly accurate astronomical occurrences. But their obsession with the heavens is clear. They carefully position their temples and monuments to mirror the constellations. Some believe they even play out their predictions of the coming 2012 alignment on a mystical ball court, where the ball going through the stone hoop represents the sun aligning perfectly with the center of the galaxy, known as the Dark Rift.
The ball court is the Milky Way. The ball is also the December solstice sun. And the goal ring is the Dark Rift in the Milky Way.
This ritual ball game not only reenacts the alignment, but according to researchers, it also incorporates the possible life or death consequences the alignment brings. For if the players cannot get the ball through the hoop, their leader is brutally beheaded.
Now, Mayan society itself was far off in time from our time period. In other words, they were looking into the future to see the time period we're in now, when the sun would rise inside the ball court. But they were very aware of the fact that as this happened, there would be a great deal of change on the planet.
If researchers are right that the Maya end their calendar to coincide with the coming galactic alignment in 2012, is this a determined attempt to caution future generations?
The question becomes, how did the Mayans and Nostradamus, how do they all have the same idea? And why, now that we're approaching this time period, is the world seemingly going to hell? Which is what they said would happen.
The quatrains of Nostradamus hold intriguing warnings about the hazards that may lie ahead.
Because of heat like that of the sun on the sea, the fish around Negroponte will be half-cooked, when in Rhodes and Genoa there is lack of food.
Some interpreters believe that this Nostradamus quatrain points to global warming as the trigger for a coming crisis.
Nostradamus seems to try to describe global warming as a fire in the sky, something as a blazing sun.
Since 1998, every single summer has been hotter than the summer before. Every single one.
Some suggest that the galactic alignment will coincide with a peak in solar activity. This controversial theory holds that the sun's impact on the Earth waxes and wanes over time, and that a solar peak can cause massive disruptions, including an increase in global temperatures.
Our own scientists are telling us that our solar cycle, the solar cycle of our sun right now, will peak right about the 2012 solstice, right in that time. And when it peaks, and this is a quote from National Center of Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado, one of the scientists there used a highly technical term to describe what this peak would be. He said it would be a doozy.
They think that within the next year there probably won't be any ice on the North Pole in the summertime. for the first time in all of recorded human history.
The melting of the polar ice caps, the rising of sea level, massive storms that are inundating coastal areas throughout the world.
This is not the random confluence of a variety of things that are just coming together. This is a much bigger transition than anything that we've ever lived in before, and we certainly don't have any experience nor the tools to be able to deal with this kind of change.
Nostradamus seems to predict the extreme results of a climate change.
This is Century 5, Quatrain 98.
At a latitude of 48 degrees at the end of Cancer, there is a very great drought. Fish in the sea, river, and lake boiled hectic from fire in the sky.
You look on a map, you look at the northern hemisphere, and all the great grain belts of the world are intersected by 48-degree latitude.
There are some verses where he talks about humanity falling into cannibalism because of the lack of food around the world.
Famine is the most dangerous threat to all of us in all prophecies of dire nature. The way you buy it in the doomsday is through hunger.
Famine is not the only threat that Nostradamus and a variety of ancient cultures are said to predict. It is believed that, like the Mayans, the Egyptians build warnings into their religious buildings, and some even theorize their once thriving civilization may have fallen prey to a catastrophe similar to ones that Nostradamus describes. Are the Egyptians cautioning us about the coming peril in our future? The pyramids of Egypt and the writings of Nostradamus may hold the key. The Lost Book of Nostradamus highlights an era when prophecy and astronomy converge in a manner that literally changes the world. One of the most striking images from this remarkable book speaks of an impending apocalypse, and some see its symbols as a warning.
What really triggers the whole thing is the 3 eclipsed moons. There's going to be 3 eclipses in 2012. Very unusual. There's going to be a total eclipse of the sun. There's going to be the eclipse of Venus against the sun. And then there's the grand eclipse of the ages, the eclipse of the sun and the center of the galaxy. This whole thing is going to culminate in 2012, is what Nostradamus is saying.
Interpreters believe that the spiral shape at the head of the scorpion in this drawing is a direct reference to the spiral shape of the Milky Way galaxy.
No one in the mid-1600s knew, supposedly, that we had a galaxy, much less that it was a spiral galaxy. And yet, the Lost Book manuscript shows just that image.
Nostradamus believes that the stars and planets hold the meaning of life. This is also at the core of Egyptian philosophy, and they incorporate these celestial designs into their most important structures. Nostradamus foresees the destruction of these monuments in his writings.
Atop the summit, fractures will appear. The lightning will shatter the stones. 3 without chains bound up around the middle.
Does the phrase, "lightning will shatter the stones," mean the pyramids of Giza will be destroyed at a future date? Some researchers believe that the layout of the Egyptian pyramids points to future planetary shifts and perhaps to the galactic alignment itself.
There's really no doubt that someone went to a great deal of effort to make the pyramids on Giza and even other pyramids in the general group correspond to alignments of stars to make sure that these large culture-defining monuments matched events in the sky.
Some experts theorize that the pyramids were built to precisely match the 3 stars that make up the belt of the constellation Orion, also known as the Hunter, or the Wise Man.
Orion is the key player. The way they joined up the dots, almost without exception in all the ancient cultures, was as a man standing with his arms raised and his legs apart, and he's wearing a belt studded with 3 different stars, the belt stars of Orion.
These researchers claim that the Egyptians are pointing to Orion because it marks the halfway point of the 26,000-year circle the sun makes between galactic alignments. This proves, they say, that the ancient Egyptians also recognized the pivotal importance of this celestial event.
The fact that the monuments are aligned with their celestial counterparts for the time in the history when they were present in the sky above Giza tells us that whoever built those monuments understood that movement. And this particular alignment for the 3 pyramids and through the Sphinx was exactly 1/2 of this 26,000-year cycle that we're now experiencing.
The Sphinx, along with the entire Giza complex, can then be viewed as pointing to the coming galactic alignment.
Our ancestors clearly understood the movement of Earth through the heavens, the movement of our solar system through the galaxy, and the changes, the cyclic changes that we could expect as that movement reached certain milestones. And it appears that one of those is upon us in this time, right now.
The Egyptians were one of the world's first superpowers. Their possible fears of coming disaster could very well have disturbing similarities to our own time.
The government of Egypt was investing so much money fighting wars that they went broke. There were strikes among the workers because there were no wages, because the weather patterns changed. The crops weren't growing the way they had in the past. There were food shortages. And all of these things contributed to the collapse of one of the greatest civilizations in the history of our planet. So we can certainly draw parallels between what happened to that civilization and what we're seeing now.
We're lifting the veil on a very esoteric subject that not that many hundreds of years ago in the West, if you actually talked about it and expounded it and said, oh, I know when the end of the world's going to happen, you would be let off and burned at the stake. So this is dangerous knowledge. This is very significant knowledge that only now can we actually talk about openly.
Nostradamus also fears repercussions for his dark predictions and cloaks them in 4-line poems called quatrains. Like the Egyptians before him, he reads the stars like a roadmap and tries to glean details regarding the end of days.
Conjoined here in the sky manifested, it enters, little rain. The sky and earth dries, undone, death, caught, arrived at a bad hour.
Like the Egyptians, Nostradamus believes that messages about the future are written in the heavens. Researchers point to this Nostradamus prediction as a metaphorical warning about the potential weakening of the Earth's magnetic field.
The Earth's magnetic field is in the process of changing and perhaps weakening in spots and showing its vulnerabilities. And anybody who's ever watched Star Trek, you know, the shields are down, bad.
When the magnetic fields are strong, they deflect the solar wind that is coming from our sun and the incoming particles from the universe beyond. And when those fields are weak, they have less ability to do that, meaning that more solar influence reaches the Earth, heats up the atmosphere of the Earth, as correlated now with melting the ice caps, the increase in the sea level.
As the Earth's magnetic field wears down, the Earth is left open to a frightening array of problems.
If the magnetic fields of the Earth were to collapse to zero and go through reversal, with a planet of 6 billion people based in computer technology, GPS satellites, our way of life would change dramatically.
A magnetic pole reversal could mean that the south and north poles would switch their magnetic charges. Some believe the resulting interference would be extremely disruptive to all the signals that our modern society sends through the sky.
What we would see down here on Earth would be a major collapse of all electronic communications. Our communication satellites would go down, our cell phones would no longer work. Anything that had to communicate through or work on an electromagnetic field would collapse.
Nostradamus also believes that he has found a clue to the timing of this potential disaster. It ties in perfectly with the images of the lost book.
There will be a solar eclipse more dark and gloomy than any since the creation of the world. And it will be such that one will think the gravity of the Earth has lost its natural movement, and that it is to be plunged into the abyss of perpetual darkness.
Could this eclipse be a reference to the sun blocking the dark center of the galaxy during the galactic alignment? And what does this disturbing image portend?
Nostradamus does mention in particular a very powerful eclipse of the sun that will be a marker point for major disasters to take place on a planetary level.
Will the coming of the galactic alignment bring disaster? Is the date of 2012 the beginning of the end? And why does the dark rift at the center of the Milky Way galaxy seem to be such a powerful place? The mysterious science of alchemy and the writings of Nostradamus reveal a critical piece of the 2012 story. The Maya, the Egyptians, Nostradamus, and the Lost Book images all may be pointing to a rare galactic alignment due to occur in 2012. If true, the phenomenon could have an untold effect on the Earth. The next drawing in the Lost Book sequence furthers the story.
This image has a man holding a sword straight up and down with, again, one of these Mobius strip patterns making an S. If you're standing in a very clear place on a hot summer night and you look up at the sky, you will see that the Milky Way makes an S across the sky. So this is the great alignment with the galaxy. It's going right up through the center of the galaxy, through this center of this S. He's telling us there's a club destroying the tree of life. So he's telling us that there's a great danger afoot when this alignment happens.
Our Milky Way galaxy is flat, with arms curving outward, giving it a spiral shape. From the Earth's perspective, when the galactic alignment occurs, it will appear that the sun is rising directly in line with the center of the galaxy. The grim prophecies of Nostradamus that some believe coincide with the timing of this alignment are similarly repeated by an impressive list of ancient cultures.
While the specifics from each tradition vary, in general, there's a remarkable consistency between all of these. And whether we're talking about the ancient Vedic traditions of India, or we're talking about the Egyptian traditions, we're talking about the biblical traditions, or the Mayan traditions, all of them say that we are going through a great change. All of them say our lives will never be the same again.
Cultures from around the world and across time have disguised their most extreme prophecies in a variety of ways. One of the most intriguing involves alchemy. Known widely as the pursuit of transforming lead into gold, it is actually a much broader scientific discipline that uses its own unique symbols and terminology. It is a way of thinking and communicating that Nostradamus is surely familiar with.
Anybody who was as smart as Nostradamus in his time period studied alchemy. There was no science. Modern science owes its entire allegiance to alchemy. Newton was an alchemist who discovered gravity. Einstein was into alchemy. Believe it or not, his wife said that what he would do every night before he went to sleep was he would read ancient books on alchemy.
Over the centuries, alchemy is replaced as a mainstream science by chemistry and physics. But its role as a symbolic language and as a philosophy of spiritual transformation survives the ages.
The alchemist is concentrating his mental and spiritual energy into the base elements and trying to transmute them and pull the spirit out of them, or possibly just scrying a bowl of water to see the future, because that could be the singularity or the miracle that might happen in an experiment that Nostradamus would perform.
In Nostradamus's time, alchemy remains the primary science of the day. Still, its practitioners ply their trade in secret, hoping to keep its potentially dangerous findings to themselves.
It could very well be his experiences in alchemy were one of the reasons why he openly obscured his prophecies, so that he would keep all the idiots of every new generation occupied, and the initiate could go beyond the code and find something else in the obscurity. Rather than metal, we're talking about the metal of spirit.
At the beginning of the 1900s, however, a rogue alchemist known only as Fulcanelli publishes a shocking text revealing some of alchemy's secrets and purporting that the legendary Society of the Masons may have used the symbols of alchemy to embed secret messages in historic buildings. The Masons are thought to have ultimately given rise to the Brotherhood of Freemasons. While they are primarily a fraternal organization that brings together members with common interests, some share Fulcanelli's view that they are also the keepers of ancient secrets.
And they're carrying on a tradition of knowledge that cannot be put into words. It's symbolic knowledge. I like to say that a symbol is worth 1,000 pictures.
Fulcanelli believes the Masons, who built many of Europe's Gothic cathedrals, use symbols that have alchemical meaning to disguise messages about the manner and timing of a future disaster.
Fulcanelli saw many of the shifts that were happening at the beginning of the 20th century as evidence of the fact that the time period was upon us, that it was going to be very soon.
For Fulcanelli, the symbols on the Gothic churches add up to a simple but chilling message.
Fulcanelli made the direct correlation between alchemy and something called Chiliasm, which is the idea that at the end of the world, everything will be made new again. It will be an alchemical transformation of reality. What this meant in Fulcanelli's terms was that we are on the cusp of a time in which alchemy is not just an isolated event that happens buried away in the laboratory, but it's a transpersonal event that happens whether you want it to or not.
Like Fulcanelli, Nostradamus foretells a time of violent transformation that seems to be eerily reminiscent of the current environmental challenges facing the world.
The end of the wolf, the lion, bull, and the ass. No longer will fall upon them the sweet manna.
Century 10, Quatrain 99 is a very serious quatrain. It's a very serious prophecy because he outlines many different animals, not just animals, but also certain food plants that we are dependent upon that could go extinct. If we lose those, we're going to be in serious trouble, because what else are we going to rely upon in terms of our food?
Honeybee pollination accounts for a good third to the half of the crops that we get our greatest nutrition from. If the honeybees disappear, unless we come up with a zillion little honeybee robots immediately, which we're not going to, it's going to lead to crop failure. The honeybee is vanishing because A, of a virus, B, a parasite, C, nobody knows. The same could be said, by the way, for the bat, another one of those unsympathetic creatures that, guess what, eat mosquitoes by the bushelful, thank you very much. So it's this scary confluence of events that all of a sudden these mainstay species, whether we like them or not, they're important to us, are disappearing for reasons that not only we can't prevent, but we can't even understand.
You've got the depletion of species that you haven't seen before. You've got extraordinary growing water problems around the world. You've got depletion of fisheries all over. You've got rapid increases in the price of food that you've never seen before.
As the food supply shrinks, a lethal chain of events unfolds.
It's a known fact that if America stopped exporting food because of a food crisis, immediately 100 nations would go hungry, and that in a year's time, Africa might lose 500 million people to famine.
This much I know, that where you have famine, you have plague. Where you cannot feed people properly, they become more susceptible to disease. And when you have disease, where people cannot do the work that they need to raise and transport the food, you have famine.
This cycle of disease and deprivation, if unchecked, could lead to the type of instability that can sweep the globe.
When you have that, you inevitably, sadly, have wars and governments fall, and the domino effect. That's what I'm most worried about beginning in 2012.
If this domino effect is not averted, there could be a serious threat to the survival of the human race.
When we talk about our time in history, biologists will tell us that there have been many extinctions in the past, and we are well into the 6th mass extinction on this planet right now.
We're going to go back to a situation very similar to Soylent Green, if you remember that movie years ago, where they're feeding off of plankton, and pretty soon they're feeding off of each other.
Life has been nearly wiped off the Earth 5 times before. Could there be another major extinction event in the future? Warnings from Nostradamus may unlock the answer. A striking number of ancient prophecies appear to coincide with the Mayan depiction of 2012 as a cosmically significant year. The predictions of famed prophet Nostradamus are also believed to describe the troubling array of global conditions today, disturbingly close to 2012. Even the lost book's astrological symbols seem to concur, as if they are veiled clues pointing to an impending shift.
What's interesting about this second image is the man with the bow, Sagittarius. And if you know your astronomy, and believe me, Nostradamus knew his astronomy, you know that Sagittarius is shooting his arrow almost exactly into the center of the galaxy.
Some interpreters believe the arrow in this drawing is pointing to the very place in the sky where the sun is predicted to rise in 2012. This galactic alignment is explained by the fact that the Earth rotates and wobbles like a top. And it is this wobble that causes our view of the sky to change. On December 21st, 2012, many believe that, as seen from the Earth, the sun will line up exactly with the center of the galaxy. Is the lost book providing one of the many warnings that something momentous will occur at this climactic time?
That's one of the most important things, not only being passed down by the Christians and the Jews and the Egyptians and even Islam, but Nostradamus and all of the prophets of the past have all felt this compelled to send this message down to us.
They left the messages in their text, in their oral traditions, in their temples. We've got to ask ourselves, what is it that could be so important that they would build entire civilizations to convey a message to us regarding our time in history. What were they trying to tell us?
Like many of the ancient prophets, Nostradamus camouflages his predictions. He writes his prophecies in the 1500s in southern France, when questioning the royals or the Catholic Church is a crime punishable by death. This forces him to be extremely careful in stating his most controversial visions of the future.
I would imagine that if you were talking to Queen Catherine and you announced to her that, yeah, all your children are going to be royals, but, you know, this one's going to die, and this one's going to die, and oh, that one's going to have a really bad end, that you might not get the patronage that you were liking. In other words, no one likes a prophet that's right too much of the time, or is too accurate about things that are very close to your heart.
Nostradamus is not alone in the need for obscurity. Avoiding behavior that would offend the church is a way of life in 16th century Europe, causing many groups to go underground. One of these secret societies is the Freemasons. While they are primarily a fraternal organization today, some believe they have a long history of hoarding secret wisdom.
In the old days, Freemasonry was the highest echelon of knowledge of its time. So when you joined the Freemasonry, you got to read their secret libraries and learn the secret knowledge that had been passed down for maybe hundreds of generations, we don't know.
Some believe Nostradamus himself is associated with the Masons.
Right around the corner from his house in Ceylon, there's a church front that shows very clearly the return of Jesus at the end of time, right in the exact position where the sun will be rising in 2012 in the center of the galaxy. And that at least a certain part of this awareness carried over to Nostradamus and influenced his idea of when to look for this great apocalyptic moment.
These Masons, who were considered some of the most skilled craftsmen of their time, plied their trade across Europe. They established a reputation as a tightly knit, ambitious group who built great Gothic cathedrals for the Catholic Church. The alchemist Fulcanelli theorizes in his book, titled The Mystery of the Cathedrals, that the Masons also had a hidden purpose. He claims that they boldly carved secret symbols that spell out their controversial prophecies into the face of these stone structures.
You really don't go to the trouble to carve the front of a massive Gothic cathedral unless you have some purpose behind it. Notre Dame de Paris is again another one of these church fronts that had coded within it very important secret information.
These symbols include a bull, a lion, an eagle, and a human face. While the Christian interpretation is that they represent the writers of the Gospels, their true meaning, according to Fulcanelli, is a warning.
These are exact symbolic references to the four fixed signs of the zodiac. The man is Aquarius, the lion is Leo, the bull is Taurus, and the eagle is Scorpio, which today has turned into a scorpion, but in those days was an eagle.
These four signs of the zodiac are the constellations that the sun passes through every year in its path across the sky. They also represent great ages of time, each lasting thousands of years. According to astrology, the human race is now moving from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. This shift marks the coming of the galactic alignment.
The most important thing that they put into the Gothic cathedrals was the secret of the end of time. Again, the same thing that's in the Mayan calendar, the same thing that's in the pyramids. Our ancestors thought it was the most important knowledge that they could pass down to us so that when we enter into this time of crisis, which is where we are right now, we will know what to do.
If it is true that the Earth's weather patterns have become increasingly erratic, is this a sign of an imminent crisis?
The real problem is that the global climate system is a very, very complex system. And in complex systems, they exhibit non-linear behavior. You're starting to see anomalous, strange behavior in the weather around the world that you never saw before. You have flooding, you have extraordinary kind of storms.
Nostradamus's quatrains seem to support the idea that nature may be preparing a terrible backlash.
Shortly afterwards, not a very long interval, a great roaring storm will be raised by land and sea, flames, animals, which will make more upheaval.
Century 2, Quatrain 40, he refers to not just simply one storm, but to a series of storms that keep coming again and again and again.
The great city of the maritime ocean, surrounded by a swamp of crystal, in the winter solstice and the spring, will be tried by a terrible wind.
If I were a 16th century man and I tried to describe these amazing neon-covered, lit, artificially lit skyscrapers with their geometric and angular cuts of glass windows and glass signs, I might call that a city that's in a swamp. He might be talking about downtown New Orleans in Hurricane Katrina.
I had a friend call me up when Katrina was happening, another Nostradamus fellow, and he wanted to talk about Century 9, Quatrain 48, because it appeared to him that this was a very direct and exact description of Katrina and all the other hurricane disasters.
If Nostradamus predicts an escalation of these battering storms, what might the climax be?
Hurricane Ike was as big as the Gulf of Mexico.
We're now finding that not just simply one storm of the century, but we're finding strings of storms of the centuries. They're coming over and over and over again.
While the storms keep coming fast and furious, the concern about 2012 rises, and the search for answers grows more urgent. Near Nostradamus' town of Salon in southern France, there is an obscure cross that may provide yet another dire warning that some believe points directly to 2012. For centuries, the prophecies of Nostradamus have been part of the historical record. While highly speculative and controversial, their author's legacy endures. Viewer discretion is advised. Nostradamus, the Lost Book manuscript, and ancient cultures from around the world appear to target the 2012 time period as one of change that could be apocalyptic in scope. For some, recent worldwide events highlight the potential for emergency. Another Lost Book drawing attributed to Nostradamus continues the story of warning.
What's interesting about this is that, again, we see the archer, Sagittarius, and he's pointing his arrow, he's actually shooting his arrow into a woman, okay? And this woman is the center of the galaxy. I would think it means that at the great alignment, the scale or the balance of our decisions and life are all going to be more important.
Closer examination of this image reveals an intriguing symbolism. Sagittarius's arrow and the woman form a cross that resembles the galactic alignment.
The sky, we presage, through clear signs and by fixed stars. Suddenly the age of change approaches, neither for its good, nor for its evil.
In this quatrain, do the phrases clear signs and fixed stars allude to the sun rising in line with the dark center of the galaxy, ushering in a sudden age of change? Are Nostradamus and the Lost Book drawings envisioning a cosmic event that causes earthly havoc?
As we go through these 7 drawings, they get more and more interesting, and this one is really interesting because it really backs up the whole motif. It's really trying to draw attention to the astrology and the astronomy of this event that Nostradamus is trying to tell us about.
If it is indeed the case that the alignment triggers a significant shift on the Earth below, pinpointing its occurrence is of vast importance. The mysterious alchemist known only by the name Fulcanelli claims in the 1920s to have decoded the Mason symbols on the Gothic cathedrals. Fulcanelli also writes of an obscure cross in southern France called the Cross of Henday. Though little is known about the origin of the cross, Fulcanelli believes it carries a message that echoes the Masons' predictions about the end of days.
What Fulcanelli, who is the first person to write about the Cross of Henday, says is that this monument is telling us about what is about to happen to us, and that this age has no other seal than that of death.
A small group of researchers believe that the symbols carved into the base of this cross reveal not only the date when the coming danger will arrive, but also the sequence in which the events will unfold.
When I began deciphering the Cross of Henday, I went through every single symbol. I came to realize that the star on the pedestal was the center of the galaxy, and that it was exactly opposite the sun, the angry sun face on the pedestal, and that the moon was exactly opposite this odd oval. And as I explored this further, I realized that the odd oval is the precession of the equinoxes. And so this is like the big clock that we're watching.
The clock appears to be counting down to the coming galactic alignment in a very specific way. The gravitational pull of the sun and the moon cause the Earth to wobble on its axis, which means that the Earth's view of the constellations changes by 1 degree every 72 years. This is called the precession of the equinoxes. Over 26,000 years, these constellations rotate a full 360 degrees back to their starting point. According to one interpretation, the cross, like the Mayan calendar, uses the last galactic alignment that happened 26,000 years ago as a starting point to count down to the next one, due to occur in 2012.
If we start with the cross, it's easy to see, okay, this is our alignment. Basically, if you look at all the images combined, you come up with a rough idea that what we're looking at is a time period. And that time period is roughly equivalent to the Mayan calendar, from roughly 1992, 1993 through 2012.
They decided to put all of the knowledge into this little obscure monument, hoping that someone would one day discover it and begin deciphering it so that we would know the secret of the end of time.
This is what Nostradamus was pointing to in the quatrains, and this is what Fulcanelli was sort of punctuating with the idea of the Henday cross. It's coming, get ready, it's going to happen, get ready, be aware of it. That's about all you can do.
According to the prophecies of Nostradamus, the catastrophes that some believe he sees climaxing in 2012 are already beginning to descend upon us.
When the fish that is both terrestrial and aquatic will be put upon the beach by a strong wave, its shape strange, smooth, and horrifying, they instantly reach the enemy from the sea to the walls.
Is this quatrain forecasting the deadly tsunami of 2004 that killed over 150,000 people?
If you look at some of the videotaped images of the tsunami wave that hit the southern part of India, where he talks about the ocean swelling and looking ugly in its appearance, and then coming in, and he says fish and animals being swept up onto the shore.
Some scientists question whether the cause of the tsunami and other impending natural disasters could be the coming galactic alignment.
As we go through that change, it's intense, and in that intensity, we can expect extremes of all the things that we've already experienced. Extremes of earthquakes. There was a 9.0 earthquake in the Pacific Ocean in a place that had never even been previously known to have a fault.
There is a growing concern that earthquakes and tsunamis may be just the beginning of the natural disasters that could bring the world tumbling down, including the potent eruptions of the sleeping giants known as supervolcanoes.
The last time one of these things really popped was in Lake Toba, Indonesia. I think it was about 70,000 years ago, and approximately 90% of what then was the human species was extincted. In today's numbers, that would be 5.5–6 billion.
In the area of Yellowstone National Park in the state of Wyoming, a subterranean supervolcano has now moved into what scientists call the red zone, a category that means it could be preparing to erupt.
Once a supervolcano such as Yellowstone moves into the red zone to where it could erupt, it's not like there's a little alarm clock in there that's gaboom. It's if it's affected by some outside stimulus that triggers it.
Some believe that trigger is coming in 2012. And if it does, the result would be nothing short of catastrophic.
And we have in 2012 coming, as I've said, this climax of solar activity, which can stimulate such things as volcanic and perhaps supervolcano eruptions. In comes the energy, metal conducts it, shakes up the crust, kaboom.
The ticking time bombs of earthquakes, tsunamis, and supervolcanoes are frightening enough. But there are those who now point to an even greater natural nightmare that trumps them all. One that may already be on a direct path to planet Earth. Mounting evidence indicates that the year 2012 may be highly significant. But to what end? Many world cultures point to riotous upheaval that could forever alter our way of life. This image, from what many believe to be the lost book of Nostradamus, offers a look at how our destiny may hang in the balance.
In this drawing, Nostradamus is looking at the Book of Life, and there's writing on the pages. And underneath the Book of Life are three women, the three fates. The Greeks have a myth that the fates were three women who weave time and weave destiny. And what he's telling us is that we have a choice, and this choice will determine our fate.
The role of choice in human affairs is not limited to Nostradamus. It is a basic principle in many ancient cultures. For the Hopi Indians in the American Southwest, it is a central tenet of their faith. They believe that at every human juncture, there are two potential outcomes. One, where goodness trumps evil and life continues, and the other, where humanity faces destruction.
All of these traditions are pointing to our time in history, some in generalities, some in specifics, and they're all telling us this is the time that they have been planning and anticipating, fearing, and preparing for a very long time.
The Hopi believe that just before the end of the world will be a period of intense trial, marked by devastating social, environmental, and political problems as well as bouts of extreme weather. A time very much like now.
When the Hopi tradition talk about the 4 previous worlds, each world, each great age ended with a cataclysm. Then they say we're now moving into the 5th.
The Hopi look to the sages of their past for answers. They believe that the appearance of ancestor spirits, called kachinas, portend important events. The most dreaded of these kachinas is known as the Blue Star.
The Hopis speak of the appearance of the Blue Star spirit, which will herald the appearance of the cataclysm. And they refer to various effects that will occur, trembling of the earth and flood and so on.
The Blue Star has not been directly connected to the galactic alignment of 2012, but its origin in the heavens and its warning of impending doom give it possible relevance. Despite the warnings of disaster, Native Americans believe that a message of hope is encoded in a sacred monument found at the Hopi Reservation in Arizona.
There's actually a prophecy rock in a place called Oribe, Arizona, where they show humans represented living this time in history, where we walk a path and the path splits. And they say humans must choose one of 2 worlds. In one path, the humans are living a world where they show the crops are growing. Another world, the humans still exist, but not in touch with themselves or the world. The food isn't available, and it's a tough life.
Those etchings and rock drawings were a history of what had occurred during their time of existence, and also what may happen in the future.
Some of the Hopi elders say the Blue Star has already happened when the comet broke up and impacted Jupiter in the 1990s and ignited a glow in the atmosphere of Jupiter that under certain spectral conditions appeared as a blue mass in the heavens. Others say that the Blue Star has not happened yet, and that when the Blue Star appears in the sky, there is a new kind of kachina, or a new god, that will physically come and dance with them in their pueblos.
The Hopis predicted in their final warnings, those who cannot celebrate change and the coming of the new dispensation will drop dead from their own fear of that change.
The Hopi are clear about the burden the human race will bear in the coming time of catastrophe.
They say in this world age there will be 3 great shakings of the earth. And they interpret this to be the first shaking was World War I, the second shaking was World War II. The third shaking, they say, cannot be predicted because humans are determining how that shaking will occur by the way we live our lives right now.
Some believe that the third shaking indicates a cataclysm from above. And if so, this could be another tie to the coming galactic alignment. It is a theme that resonates in the writing of Nostradamus.
Nostradamus looked into the future and often horrified him. There is definitely a cosmic disaster described.
Where all is good in sun and moon and abundant, its ruin approaches. It comes from the sky to sift through your fortunes in the same state as the 7th rock.
Nostradamus seems to describe some kind of a nuclear holocaust. And this does not necessarily mean to be like Hiroshima or Nagasaki. This can be something that suggests some kind of radiation leakage or whatever.
A small number of scientists who have compared the predictions of Nostradamus and the Hopi believe that they both could be describing characteristics of a galactic superwave, a blizzard of cosmic radiation that is thought to mimic the destructive capabilities of a nuclear explosion.
The question arises sometimes regarding precisely what this blue star of the Hopi may be. It could very possibly be the galactic superwave that some of the scientists are talking about. They have a great wave of energy that pulses through the universe and disrupts the magnetic fields of the Earth and causes changes in the atmosphere that are recorded in layers of ice.
The exact nature of this cosmic energy is difficult to determine, but its impact could be devastating. It is intriguing that the origin of superwaves is said to be the center of the galaxy, which plays a prominent part in the galactic alignment.
The troubling aspect of the superwave phenomenon is that these cosmic rays travel towards us from the galactic center at the speed of light. So there wouldn't be very much warning. One day everything's fine and suddenly, it's gone crazy. If a superwave did come, let's hope just minor, maybe it would just knock out the satellites. We wouldn't have cell phones or television. It could be quite an economic impact for quite a few years. But then we would recover. If it's something minor like that, we should be thankful. It could overload the power lines, so it would be like an EMP that they talk about for a nuclear event where somebody would detonate a nuclear bomb in the atmosphere and would cause blackouts all over the planet.
Is this the phenomenon that Nostradamus and the Hopi are describing? Or did they envision something even more perilous?
What would be the worst scenario, for example? We could point to what happened at the end of the Ice Age. The last superwave that wiped out 95% of the large animals from North America. And you hear stories that a large part of the human race was wiped out and only few survived. This was probably one of the most significant events to occur to the human race in our history.
If the blue star and a possible galactic superwave are two of the major cosmic events that some claim may coincide with the 2012 alignment, perhaps a startling prophecy from one of the world's greatest scientists can shed new light on what will unfold. Sir Isaac Newton, known as the father of physics, also believed firmly in prophecy and alchemy, a fact which ties him in unexpected ways to Nostradamus. Nostradamus casts a wide net in his endeavor to capture the elusive truths of human life and destiny. He consults the most esteemed wisdom of the past, from ancient civilizations to the great biblical prophets, in his attempt to map the very future of man.
This drawing in the Lost Book of Nostradamus is the climax of the 7 drawings. In this particular one, there's only 2 women now. So one of the fates has disappeared. There's another interesting aspect. The wheel of time no longer has any spokes, which means the wheel is going to fall off. And the third disturbing aspect of this drawing is that the book of life is empty. There's nothing written on it.
The book of life is a symbol from the Bible that is one of many religious images that Nostradamus incorporates into his work. The Bible is a book that has guided and divided humanity for thousands of years. Some believe it holds a coded message about our future. The search for a Bible code begins in the 17th century with English physicist Isaac Newton, who believes that he can decode this warning and reveal the timing of the apocalypse. The same challenge is tackled in the 20th century by an Israeli mathematician.
The Bible code was a statistical analysis of a particular portion of the Bible made by an Israeli mathematician named Eliyahu Rips. And basically he found encoded in those books a remarkable, beyond coincidence, wealth of information predicting the names of great rabbis and other religious figures who would come.
In 1994, 3 Israeli mathematicians discovered number patterns that American author Michael Drosnin uses to pinpoint what he believes is a direct biblical reference to the end date of the Mayan calendar, adding a layer of intrigue to the 2012 question.
What he did was lay out all the characters of a particular portion of the Bible, lay them out as they were written, and then whatever words crossed or were near, significance was attributed to that. The fact that 2012 and Earth Annihilated did cross was an eye-popper.
Many believe that the Bible and the Jewish Torah both contain warnings of possible Armageddon.
There is a reference in the Christian tradition, in their book of Revelations, of a mountain of fire hitting the earth. We can understand that today as being a meteor strike, a comet, something which could be of extinction level. But yet, many modern Torah scholars ask, what exactly caused the flood of Noah? And they claim it was an astronomical event, that a body from outer space swung around the sun, pulling upon the Earth's gravitational field, ripping the seas out of their beds, literally shifting and altering the orbit of the planet. Is it possible that such an event can happen again? There are those who state that this will come, and that this will come soon.
Another possible correlation is found between these descriptions of the end of days and the timing of the Jewish calendar, which is said to stop in its 7,000th year.
Depending exactly on how you want to count and look at the Jewish calendar, which version of the Jewish calendar you want to go by, we just have hit Millennium 7. We've just crossed over into the 7,000th year.
Is the occurrence of the galactic alignment, when the sun will once again line up with the very center of our galaxy, somehow connected to the end dates of the Mayan and Jewish calendars?
The fact that Iran has now arisen to be a great threat to the West was something that was recorded in prophecy over 1,500 years ago. I definitely see the upheavals that exist today are all portents of the greater crisis which faces all mankind. And as the old saying goes, it's going to get darker before the dawn.
Nostradamus also discerns danger related to the Bible. He foresees trouble in the Middle East in many of his prophecies, and specifically seems to envision the war in Iraq.
He will enter wicked, unpleasant, infamous, tyrannizing over Mesopotamia, all friends made by the adulterous lady, the land dreadful and black of aspect.
This is Century 8, Quatrain 70. An army of crusaders has never, in the times of the Crusades, ever set foot in Iraq. That is the ancient name. Mesopotamia is the name of Iraq.
Researchers believe Nostradamus sees the Iraq War as a religious battle. Another quatrain has been linked to this one as part of a larger prophecy.
The great host and sect of the cross will be massed in Mesopotamia, of the nearby river the fast company that such law will hold for the enemy.
Soldiers of the Cross, Crusaders. President Bush called the war on terror a great crusade. But the key to understanding this prophecy is, how do you define the final line? He's saying that America will lose in Iraq.
I think the most important thing that Nostradamus is saying about this time period is beware. The wars, the religious fundamentalism. There's no quatrain from Nostradamus saying, and they all lived happily ever after and worshiped the same God. He doesn't say that.
Nostradamus predicted a legion of problems arising in our times. The recent and devastating downward spiraling of financial markets is another crisis currently plaguing the world. According to some, this too appears to have been anticipated in Nostradamus's quatrains.
Within the closed temple, the lightning will pierce. It injures the citizens within their fort. Horses, cows, men, the wave will hit the wall. Through famine, drought, under the weakest armed.
If you think of the closed temple being the stock exchange and the temples of money on Wall Street, then they have been struck by lightning. They've been demolished, in fact. And so we catch the sense of this, of the dismay and the disruption caused by the economic disasters of recent months.
Nostradamus says that there will be mobs of people who will storm the banks trying to get their money back, but the banks will be closed, the money will be useless, and will be thrown out and burned like paper. Basically, banking systems are going to come to an end.
As painful as a financial meltdown and war are to endure, some wonder whether they are a mere prelude to what awaits in 2012.
Many new diseases that have cropped up in the last 20 years that we simply have no medical cure for. The depletion of vital resources and the violent competition for what people believe are the few remaining resources that are left, leading to wars, regional wars that the experts were concerned could actually become global wars. To the best of our knowledge, this has never happened in human history, and all of them must be solved within the next 8 to 10 years. That makes our time in history very, very unique.
The Lost Book contains one last piece of information that may be the final deciding factor that reveals whether 2012 will be an end of violence or a time of violent end. Are ancient cultures sending a resounding message of deep importance? Is a cataclysmic event on the all-too-near horizon? Man's awareness of his own mortality is central to his interpretation of the past and his expectation of the future.
Past cultures had the idea that, okay, a culture will exist for a time. Even the Roman Empire can't last forever. But that there would be something afterwards. There would be a period of disturbance. It's only very recently that we've come around to the idea that there may not be anybody after us, that we may actually be able to destroy all life on the planet. And there can't be any accident about the fact that this idea becomes common currency at the same time as this whole idea of the galactic alignment and the end of time and so forth.
All of these traditions are pointing to our time in history, some in generality, some in specifics, and they're all telling us this is the time that they have been planning and anticipating, fearing, and preparing for a very long time.
For some, the last Lost Book image sends a simple but unmistakable message that failing to heed its warning may have devastating consequences.
This is saying we can either continue on like we're going and the book of life will keep going and being written, or there's a chance that we may not go on and we may be facing some kind of extinction event.
At sunrise, one will see a great fire, noise and light extending towards the north. Within the earth, death and cries are heard. Death awaiting them through weapons, fire, and famine.
Nostradamus is trying to scare us into not destroying ourselves. Nostradamus is trying to scare us to stop oceans from rising, stop our children from dying of starvation, stop our climate from going out of control.
There have been world ages and world civilizations that have failed and failed to change, and they were completely wiped out. Even their memory has been wiped out to us. But it's saying, hey, this is also happening even today, that if certain changes are not being made now, you could be the next Atlantis.
As 2012 approaches, the world's problems appear to be multiplying.
If you just read the newspaper, if you listen to CNN, What you see is constant news about rapidly increasing changes in major fundamental areas that support humankind. Rapid climate change, financial disruption, and energy reorganization, and species depletion, and water problems.
Harvard biologist E.O. Wilson talks about this time in history, the uniqueness of our time in history. He says that we're living the bottleneck of time. The bottleneck when our resources and our ability to solve our problems will be pushed to the limits.
And as the problems mount, time seems to be speeding up.
It has been said that the 20th century had as much history packed into it as the last 19 preceding it. It's quite likely that the 21st century will have 19 20th centuries in it.
We will see 1,000 times the technological change in the 21st century than we saw in the 20th century. There's nobody alive can wrap their head around that concept. In the 20th century, we started from horses, and we became automobiles and airplanes, and we went to the moon, and we've got the internet. And if you multiplied that times 1,000 in the next century, you cannot imagine what that might be. If history is any kind of an indicator for what we're about to experience, then this transition is going to be very short, and it'll happen very soon.
December 21st of the year 2012 marks a date, but we're already in the zone of time where, as a civilization and as a planet, we are being forced into solving the greatest challenges of recorded human history.
If modern man continues on the current path, some believe Nostradamus' darkest predictions could be triggered when the galactic alignment occurs. Yet there may be at least a window of opportunity. While the final Lost Book image shows an empty book of life, suggesting extinction, some see a ray of hope.
This is done by someone who knew what they were doing. That's why he's holding the book up to us. He's saying, it's your choice. You decide what it is you want to do. And it's a work of compassionate genius, because he's trying to give us a message to save us, to save our civilization, and to save our lives.
Is this the reason that so many cultures encoded warnings for future generations? Could the galactic alignment actually be a trigger for an outcome that mankind controls?
It's possible that the cataclysmic event that has been predicted might not be something that's that tragic. It could be more of a wake-up call.
If you could take anything from Nostradamus, it would be a sense of hope. No matter how bad things get, no matter how bad the wars and the famines and the nuclear holocaust, humanity will survive.
I think the question that we really must answer now is, do we have the courage to marry the wisdom of our past with the best science of today? Where will a spiritually based science lead us after December 21st of the year 2012?
Some say that the ending of the Mayan calendar is itself a message of hope. That December 21st, 2012 is not marking an actual end, but rather the conclusion of one age and the start of a new one.
Ancient wisdom, contemporary knowledge, put them together, and we just might pull through.
For all his sobering visions, Nostradamus himself describes the coming days as having many possible outcomes. This preeminent prophet speaks not of a future fixed in stone, but one where man creates his own destiny.
Remember, this is the prophet who gave his king two futures to follow. One where he describes him as a great uniter, a second Charlemagne of France, and another where he dies in a jousting accident. He can't have fulfilled both futures. He was offered a choice. You all are offered a choice. You either pave the way to a new humanity, or you wait, let somebody else fix it, and you all go down in an apocalypse.
cultures wax and wane. Civilizations rise and fall. Even the mighty prophet Nostradamus is, in the end, a mere mortal. But his immortal message lives on, prodding us to prevail together or perish.
The transformation will be very difficult. Cities and provinces will gain by the changes. Their hearts held high, prudence established, the cunning ones expelled, the sea, the land restored as human harmony awakens.
I really don't think that there will be any great shift on the morning of December 21st, 2012. The UFOs won't land, the comet won't hit that morning, but it'll be a point in which, looking back, we can all say, oh yeah, that's when it all ended. And that was the year in which the new Rome fell and the United States transformed itself, and hopefully we began to move forward towards some better future.
And I hope I'm wrong.
Will daybreak come on December 21st, 2012? Or will it be the year that ends all years? Hidden predictions about the end of days may be encoded in the Egyptian pyramids, the Mayan calendar, the mysterious cross of Henday, and the secret society of Freemasons. And Nostradamus may hold the key that unlocks them all. December 21st, 2012 approaches. Will it mark a catastrophic occurrence, as some ancient cultures suggest? Many believe the date is targeting a rare astrological phenomenon called the galactic alignment that may trigger unspeakable chaos. The recently uncovered Lost Book of Nostradamus contains 7 stark images that also might point to 2012. Is this proof that there was ancient knowledge of a coming event?
The 7 images in the Lost Book of Nostradamus are telling us a story, and that's why they're united by this wheel of fortune or wheel of time at the top. This is the part that Nostradamus really wants us to recognize, emphasize, and understand. Those images start with the sun, and under the sun is a lion. That's obviously calling attention to the fact that when the sun is in Leo, this is somehow important. When the sun is in Leo, or when the sun is in the opposite sign, Aquarius, that means we're at the galactic alignment.
This is another reference by Nostradamus to the galactic alignment. Many believe the Maya discovered this intriguing phenomenon caused by the Earth's rotation hundreds of years ago. If the Earth spun perfectly on its axis, the view of the sky above would never change. But because it spins slightly off-center in a wobble motion, our view of the stars shifts slowly over time. Every 26,000 years, this background lines up so that the sun appears to rise directly in front of the center of the galaxy, creating what some call the galactic alignment.
Clearly, Nostradamus was aware of the time period from roughly 1992 to roughly 2012, 2014 as being enormously significant because of the number of quatrains that we can specifically identify as having some reference to this time period. It's the idea that he pinpointed astronomically the moment in which...
Like the Maya and other cultures before him, Nostradamus looks into the stars and sees coming danger.
There will be a great shedding of blood. Heaven will appear unjust. Both on land and sea and in the air, cults, famine, kingdoms, plagues, confusion.
A controversial figure shrouded in mystery, Nostradamus died almost 500 years ago, centuries and worlds away from 2012. Yet time and again, his predictions are interpreted as highly accurate.
He has foreseen many of the major events, changes in terms of politics, religion, even science and inventions.
Why is he the only one we're talking about in 4.5 centuries? There's only one reason. Because every so often comes a bright light of clear data that could only have happened from somebody who saw it before it happened.
When a manuscript with Nostradamus' name on it appears at a book exhibition in Rome, there is talk that the timing of its discovery is no accident. This controversial book contains a series of 7 images that some experts believe is a detailed chronology of the coming crisis in 2012. Now, for the first time, these drawings will be compared with prophecies and warnings from ancient people of all backgrounds.
These prophecies have this eerie resemblance to each other, which many researchers into this work, kind of get goosebumps.
There are, by my count, 15 or 16 independent kind of indicators that all suggest that 2012 is going to be a time of extraordinary shift. There's no way to see your way through the layered kind of series of converging extraordinary things. Even one of them is enough to dramatically disrupt the whole system.
2012 is the year of the domino effect. It's the year which could set off the chain of events where a natural catastrophe spurs a war, brings down an aspect of the economy, where the system, which is in one sense so robust but also so fragile and interdependent, I think 2012, I think it's going to be that kind of year.
For centuries, the prophecies of Nostradamus have been part of the historical record. While highly speculative and controversial, their author's legacy endures. Viewer discretion is advised. December 21st, 2012. Daybreak doesn't come. All remains dark. The world has come to an end. Many ancient cultures from across the globe describe startling events that seem to be taking place now. Are they pointing to 2012? Newly discovered drawings that many believe are from the famed prophet Nostradamus may hold the answer.
We're really on the edge of the biggest ride in all of history.
Life on Earth has faced extinction at least 5 times before. Is Nostradamus telling us that another epic disaster is on the way?
2012 is kind of the beginning of upheavals in the world, rather than the end.
Is 2012 the year the cosmic clock finally winds down to 0 days, 0 hope? Decoding the final predictions of Nostradamus may provide the critical answers before the clock strikes 2012. The recently discovered lost book of Nostradamus reveals drawings that may contain coded clues about what will happen in 2012. Like Nostradamus's quatrains, these drawings give dire warnings, and this popular prophet's immense stature makes them difficult to ignore.
Many people today, when they find themselves frustrated by the inability of science to answer some of the deepest questions of our time, are looking to the past. And this is where we look to the great seers of the past, such as Nostradamus.
Our planet is faced with crises of alarming complexity. oil shortages, vanishing species, deadly tsunamis, economic chaos, and nuclear threats. Is this coincidence, or is something more ominous unfolding?
We are reaching a confluence of tipping points in fundamental systems. There's tipping points in the energy system, there's tipping points in the climate systems of the planet, there's tipping points in terms of the financial system, food.
Which the sun is most directly conjunct with the center of the galaxy. That's a pretty good hit.
Nostradamus uses a variety of methods to derive his quatrains. But his understanding of the heavens is crucial to his work. He is an astute astrologer who believes that the map of the future is embedded in the stars.
To a certain degree, his basic idea of forecasting the future is based on the idea that time is cyclical, that there are motions of the sun and the moon and the stars, and that as those patterns, those angles between planets repeat, that there would be similar events.
In order to chart these coming events, Nostradamus studies changes in the night sky, some that take decades to play out.
Seems to have been aware of what we call the precession of the equinox, in which that the whole night sky is moving slowly backwards 1 degree every 72 years.
This is a direct reference to the coming galactic alignment that may be at the heart of the 2012 phenomenon. The Earth's off-center rotation means that our view of the stars shifts very slowly, changing only 1 degree every 72 years. Amazingly, some researchers believe this was precisely charted by the ancient Mayan civilization. The Mayans used their gift for understanding the Earth's movements to create a remarkably precise calendar, one that has endured for thousands of years. It ends on December 21st, 2012.
Once every 26,000 years, we line up through the December solstice sun with the center of the Milky Way galaxy. This seems to be the reason why the Maya picked December 21st of 2012 to end their great cycle.
The Mayan civilization thrives in Central America between the years 250 and 900 CE, then mysteriously disappears. Both scientifically sophisticated and savage, they are able to predict the galactic alignment without telescopic tools and seem to associate it with a cycle of violent change.
If we go back 26,000 years ago to the last time that we entered into Aquarius, we find that this is the beginning of Cro-Magnon man, the end of Neanderthal, the first campfires are found at this point, and we can see that there are these incredible historical correspondences. We know that the last time that the galactic alignment happened, hundreds of species disappeared.
Skeptics claim that an ancient interpretation of the stars is unlikely to have any significance.
Production, water issues.
We're at the moment when all of these things converge, that time when the world is either destroyed or made new or both.
Every world culture has always had its own prophecies of an end times. I think it's only natural that people are feeling a connection between our cultural traditions with what is happening in the world today.
Eerier still, some believe these same prophecies are portrayed in the Lost Books images. All seem to point to the fact that in 2012, from the Earth's perspective, the sun will align with the center of the Milky Way galaxy in an incredibly rare astronomical phenomenon that occurs only once every 26,000 years.
Half the 26,000 year cycle coincides pretty darn accurately with the last ice age and the end thereof, and to talk about the greatest time of global warming was the melting of the last ice age. God forbid we should be in for something of that magnitude.
Because the Earth is rotating, our view of the stars changes over time. The galactic alignment, in simplest terms, is when the sun appears to rise in a direct line with the center of the Milky Way galaxy. According to an array of ancient cultures, this alignment seems to signify a time of traumatic change.
The world as a whole feels like we're approaching some kind of passage. And I think what is at the root of this is the galactic alignment.
One of the most significant ancient cultures thought to have observed this phenomenon is the Maya, famous for their advanced grasp of astronomy. Their possible warning that this alignment of the sun and the galaxy center, known as the Dark Rift, might bring terrible consequences, is believed to be repeated by a number of ancient cultures.
Most of these end times apocalyptic predictions and visions of the future have centered on the fact that when the sun is rising in this dark rift, it's going to be bad. This is the time of cataclysm. This is the time of destruction.
The ancients knew how to be at one with themselves, with all of nature, with all of life, with all of the cosmos. And we have lost touch with that. A lot of what is happening now, particularly with the changes that are taking place in the ecology, within the oceans, all of these things, which were all predicted by Nostradamus and several other different prophets,